Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss, take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. You set me all aflame and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Don McKeag Show. This is a show where we educate, mediate, consolidate, coagulate, infuriate, hallucinate sometimes, but we never, ever, ever imitate. This is a call-in show. I'm here with my co-host in the background, but he'll come on every now and then, Ken Bukes. And we welcome you to the Don McKeag Show. As I do on my radio show every Saturday, if you like what you hear and you want more, every Saturday from 11 to 1 on Cape Cod Radio, 95.1, that's Hot Radio. We have a lot of Plymouth listeners, a lot of Carver listeners, and others. You may tune in, 95.1 FM, and we'd be happy to have you join us and call in there as well as here. As is my wont, I start many of the shows with a quote, almost 500 years old, from Martin Luther. Martin Luther, for those that don't know, and I'm very dismayed that many school people, many who've gone through public schools don't know a lot of things they should because of political correctness or whatever. Heaven forbid we promote Christianity, even though it is the foundation of why we have, every one of us, what we have, why others come here by the millions, illegally, I might add. Anyway, Martin Luther took on the Catholic Church, which was extremely corrupt at the time, once again, partly because they were really the only religion to speak of. They were Christian, and by the only religion, I don't mean in other parts of the world. Of course, there was Buddhism, but I'm saying in the European world, it was a Catholic Christian religion. And unfortunately, as what happens when you have no competition and you have no moral checks, you get bad people running the show. We can see that in this country now. But here was a devout priest who took on the corruption of the church that he loved. This, remember, I repeat, is not to speak against the Catholic religion. It's just like many don't understand in this country. Brilliant people, supposedly, at least they have PhDs. Not only is there nothing wrong with our form of government, it is the best, has proven to be the best government type at any time in the history of man. It is unfortunately being hurt, if not ruined, by the people who are in the positions of authority. But getting back to Martin Luther, where he said, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when we all, I'm paraphrasing, we all must decide to take a position that's neither safe nor politic nor popular, we must take a position because our conscience tells us it is right 500 years ago. Tonight I was going to talk about of several things, but one of the things that current is very disturbing, a continued disturbing impact of political correctness on our young people who are now, of course, in their 40s. The liberal Democrats and liberal Republicans, too, liberals in general, have permeated the minds of many when it comes to many of the Founding Fathers' strong beliefs. The left has been able to either water them down or eliminate them over the course of time through controls of schools, especially the colleges. And if you noticed, and of course people are apathetic, and that's why we have a problem now too, is that people have got it too good. They don't vote. Or they vote for a particular party that they grew up with since they were, you know, little. But we had a vote, a UN-sanctioned vote, of whether or not our Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, was to remain. 46 senators, Democrats, voted to remove your right to carry on, bear arms. This is a direct result from the constant hammering away by the press, which is liberal, with very few exceptions, constantly focusing on the deaths caused by lunatics with a gun. They focus on the gun, not on the person. They don't realize, I read it, how many millions of people we have, men and women in this country, certainly not in New England, which is loaded with liberalism, feel-goodism, but throughout the country, that the fact that they have rifles and guns for recreation, of which, by the way, is a minuscule misuse of legal registered guns. That doesn't matter, though, to today's press and to today's liberal, to the left. They want to dismantle this country's government, the foundation. They're attacking Christianity. Hollywood is running amok. There are no standards anymore. Oh, they put PG on there and then they throw everything. They've got swear words and cartoons for little kids now. And that's the truth. And that's because there's no oversight, because we have liberal mentality, and because we're people. And I keep mentioning we have the 7 deadly sins, and they're in each and every one of us, potentially. Many people would never have that problem, but all of us are capable at given times to have that happen. Elizabeth Warren, of course, voted. I will say Markey is not on the list. But this is where your Democratic Party is going, ladies and gentlemen. I keep reminding you, a former Democrat, lifelong Democrat, a John F. Kennedy Democrat who finally has had it up to here because the liberals have taken over the party. Once again, as I mentioned, the Catholic Church, this is not demeaning those who vote Democrat, although I guess it is, because you're the ones that keep putting these same people in office. You won't get rid of them. And it's because they're a payoff party now. John Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's pretty powerful stuff. And it is not the way America is running today under Democratic Party leadership. I repeat, I am not a Republican. I vote Republican. I vote against Democrats because something has to be done. And I vote. Please don't be one of these people like some of my friends. I'm just not going to vote. Please don't do that. I beg you. Vote for Alfred E. Newman. Vote for your dog. I don't care. But go to the polls. Well, anyway, on top of the tremendous cost the elimination of our Second Amendment, do you understand the controls you're giving up if the private citizen cannot defend themselves? Do you understand? I don't think you do, and young people certainly don't. Because it's all about feelings with liberals, you know. Oh, isn't that awful? That little boy was killed because he got a gun, got a hold of a gun. That's irresponsible behavior by someone. But what about the kids that get into a car at 14 and smash the car up and kill themselves or somebody else, or someone else driving? I don't hear the liberals ever talk about, well, maybe we ought to look at driving cars. Now, it's becoming the crack in this veneer of global warming. Even Greenpeace, some of the other former total support, total pushing of global warming. Even Al Gore, they tell me, I can't believe it. We can't do what we do on the radio on the Cape, and that is to have different quotes available to us. But it has been an insane and expensive. And if you hear your own John Kerry, our former senator, and this president, they will not let it go because liberals can never, ever backtrack. They can never admit they're wrong. They don't understand that makes a bigger person. When you admit you're wrong, because the facts show you you're wrong, you're a bigger person, not a weaker person. After this winter, I mean, anyone, even the egghead Eastern College professors, would have to be made to look at that judgment. We continue to spend billions of dollars on something that just isn't so. After a 10-year study, many scientific communities, scientific groups are saying the evidence of any kind of warming is minimal. Yes, there's temperature changes in different parts of the world, and in this country, but that has always been. And they definitely poo-poo that we are responsible, and it's carbon monoxide. But again, you'll never hear the globe. You won't see the globe. They are incapable of being truthful when it's not in their best interest. But one of the things, I don't know if you've read it, I bought it at the library in Carver. Libraries are wonderful, by the way. Excuse me, I've been writing a book, which I'm nervous about. That is going to be any good, but anyway. It's gotten me disciplined into doing, I was an English teacher, high school. So I've always, been interested in reading and always tried to promote reading in my students. I still do when I see the young kids. Too much of this technological help. I don't know what our kids are going to do if the technology somehow goes away. I don't know if they're capable of standing on their own and doing it. A lot of them are, don't get me wrong. But anyway, at the Carver Library, like all libraries, there are people who donate books, and then the libraries have a sale that brings in some money, and they sell the books for 25 cents. Plymouth does it. I spend a lot of time in the Plymouth. Beautiful. Both those libraries, Plymouth and Carver, are not only wonderful places, but have terrific staffs. And they really service the public in so many ways, and I want to commend them It's a governmental group that, to me, is really doing a lot for the communities. Well, this book here came in. Someone had passed away, and the wife brought in the. And I had never read it. It's called JFK, The Reckless Years. Reckless Youth, I'm sorry, Reckless Youth. And it's written by Nigel Hamilton, a terrific author he's written about the Clintons, but he's also well known. He got some Pulitzer Prize for the General Montgomery of World War II. And he initially had the cooperation of the Kennedy family. Now, those that don't know, I lived in Hyannisport. I was very, very close to Senator Edward M. Kennedy, who I loved as a man. I disagreed with some of his politics, but I'll tell you, he was a kind and really good guy in so many ways. But we won't go there. The point is, I have a tremendous interest. I spent a lot of time in the House and in the neighborhood and met a lot of people there. And I was always fascinated. I voted John Kennedy was the first president I could vote for, and I was a freshman at the University of Massachusetts. Actually, I was a sophomore when he was running. I'm Irish, so that was another positive. But I remember seeing him with Jackie coming, when he was still a senator, coming out of St. Francis Xavier Church on South Street in Hyannis, and I remember being just so aware of his body language, and I just liked his smile, and I thought, geez, you know, I like his looks. I wasn't interested in politics or anything of that type. But anyway, so this book, I bought it, I don't know, as a quarter or something, some exorbitant fee, and it is very, very detailed. And this Nigel Hamilton, I might add, his father was the CEO and president of the London Times, the London Sunday Times, so they're big time. And he was big time, and he was at the John McCormick School of Politics, or whatever they call it, and was working at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, when he decided to write 3 books about JFK. And, of course, there have been dozens written. I've read many, some better than others, but I've always been very interested, again, because of that background. But anyway, this book, I've just finished it. And one of the sad things that's happened is it's very candid and it's loaded. It's very long because it's so detailed. There are letters and notes that JFK wrote as a young man that were kept by friends, and especially by this Lem Billings, who he went to first Princeton and then ended up at Harvard, but he was his best friend. And it's just young people stuff, young men stuff. But why I mention this is because it just hit me, the comments. What happened when, this is 1946 when Jack Kennedy ran for Congress, and he ran against, well, James Michael Curley, who was under indictment, by the way. This shows you we haven't changed. When I get discouraged by the voters, as I am now, I'm very discouraged with the voters. I'm discouraged with the system. And I come on and do this show strictly to inform on the other side as best I can, and to let people know that someone out there, as other conservative talk show people are doing, we're concerned because we know the difference. I've lived long enough to know the difference. So when I see these things that show that nothing much is new, I don't say it makes me feel better, but at least I don't feel as though we've totally fallen apart. And if you read about Rome, it was the same thing. Politics and corruption are bedfellows, as they say, unfortunately, because it's such an important thing. But anyway, Jack Kennedy had been a war hero, of course, was in a PT boat, sank, and he saved his crew, and he was very ill. He was a very sickly young man for years and years of his life. His brother Bob said that his brother was sick at least half the days of his life, and he only lived till he was 46. But here's what I thought I'd read tonight, because it's something that I think we ought to, one, remember on the positive, and then also remember on the negative. When he was running for Congress, James Michael Curley was in office, and Joe Kennedy bought out basically, James Michael, being under an indictment, he got him to withdraw. You know, he was up for re-election, but he got him to withdraw and run for mayor of Boston, which he won again for like the 7th time. And that opened the way for Jack Kennedy at 29, I believe he was, to run and win. He ultimately won the nomination and then won. But unlike so many politicians today who have no credentials, Jack Kennedy was more than just a millionaire's son, more than just a young Harvard grad, excuse me. He had traveled Europe and been around the world leaders for years because his father had been the ambassador to England during World War II. And he was very observant, and he wrote about it. He wrote a book, Why England Slept, that was a bestseller. But anyway, here's one of the things that I believe when I listen to these pundits and these liberals and these college professors that just irritate me no end. I'd like to have them remember this. Remember, this is 1946. And what Jack Kennedy did is when it didn't go into the politic of the day, he started moralizing and talking about how important. Of course, now this was right after World War II, where when I grew up in the 50s, the late 40s and 50s, those were the best years. Kenny, you were around then too. It was a totally different country. People worked together because we had less, because we all suffered together. There's nothing like suffering. I forget who made the song, I miss the hungry years. And that's true. When you pull together as a family, as a group, because you've got to work for something. We've got too many people sitting on their duffs making too much money and having too much free time, which they then infect their children with. But that's another story. Anyway, Jack Kennedy, one of the things he said here, he was talking about America's image in Europe and in the world during and after World War II. When he talks about the American Legion and the fact that Americans poured millions of dollars, but more importantly, millions of American goods were responsible for saving England. And when Harry Truman was the president after the death of FDR and after the war, the Nazi war, the German war was over, we had that rescue flying over the Russian barricade of Berlin, and we saved millions of lives, millions of young people. Millions of people in Europe alive today would not have been had it not been for the Americans. The workers of England, he said, were impressed for the first time by the American as an individual, by the kind of life he lived at home in America, and by the country itself as an industrial giant. English workers wanted to be like American workers, and the Labour Party held out a promise like that to them. England, Ireland, and Germany, all these countries are different and all face different problems. But from each one, and indeed from every country that I visited in Europe, I came away with one great impression: the greatness of my own country. Our young people should be told that. But they're being taught by people at the collegiate level too often who've never been in the service, never been to Europe, and it's fashionable in the liberal establishment to demean their own country. Of course, they reap the benefits. Anyway, unless he has been abroad since the war ended, no American can possibly realize what a tremendous place America occupies in the world today. In England, for example, before the war, an American was just a tourist, and America the land where the tourists came from. When I was in Russia in 1939, Americans were viewed with darkest suspicion and considerable dislike. But now a change has come about. All of our millions of young men who swarmed over Europe, all the millions and millions of tons of equipment that were poured by us into the war has made Europeans realize that here indeed is the great productive giant of the world. During this war, we fought on two fronts and at the same time shipped $41 billion worth of Lend-Lease equipment abroad for the use of other countries. No other country in the world, you hear it? Anti-Americans out there, do you hear it? No other country in the world could have ever duplicated the tremendous job, and we still do it. Look at what happens. Look at your TV every time there's an earthquake. In our enemy lands, in Iraq, Iran, China, who's the first to go there? We occupy a great position in the world today. We must measure up to our responsibility. But we must not forget that we have here in our own country a problem just as great as that of any other country in the world. And that is the problem of keeping our great productive machinery going at full capacity. We must do this if we are going to provide jobs. In this case, he says, for those young men who are coming home. But it's just the same right now. These socialist Democrats don't get it. John Kennedy, that I believed in, was not a socialist. He was a capitalist and a socialist in programs, as I was. This is the first and most important task we face. We will be in a far better position to help solve the world's problems if we first solve our own. This is what got him elected. No other politician was speaking like this in 1946. Now, the other thing that I wanted to read that just is so disturbing, because it to me jumped out, and it's just like Boston today, who runs Massachusetts. I've been in several businesses in Massachusetts. I was born and brought up in Weymouth, Massachusetts. I've lived for 35 years on the Cape. I live now in Carver. I love Massachusetts and the people. I don't like Massachusetts politics. Here was a family obstetrician that brought Jack Kennedy into the world, writing to him when he was running for office in 1946. See if this jumps out at you in today's Boston politics.
Do you think it was written by somebody from the Globe?
Not by somebody from the Globe, that's for sure, Kenny. Never having been involved in politics, I don't pretend to know a great deal about them, but as one who stands on the sidelines, I have my own definite views as to the type of men who should aspire to public office. Frankly, he's writing this to John Kennedy. Frankly, and I don't believe I'm telling you anything as you are a keen observer, the caliber of men, and I mean Democrats, who have been running the state in recent years is a reflection on the intelligence of the voters of Massachusetts. Anybody think like that? Motivated by selfish interests and lacking in the qualifications of their office, they have squandered the taxpayers' money for the sole purpose of building up patronage and perpetuating their lofty existence. They have not had the best interests of the state or the people at heart. I read your denial of the statement in a New York paper that you were seeking a public office in Cambridge. However, why don't you give serious consideration to running for Congress in Curley's district when he is elected mayor of Boston next month? This is before Jack Kennedy had declared himself. He ends, this is a doctor, the man that brought him into the world, a clean-cut, sincere, intelligent, and honest candidate with your background and following is a natural. And believe me when I say Massachusetts needs men of your type. Maybe my idea is not original and you have already given serious thought. If so, you can rely on me to personally carry your case to the voters. Now, I hope you can see why that jumped out at me and why it validated my following of Jack Kennedy and of the Democratic Party that surrounded him. It was a different country when he was president. And that is that. The last thing is a statement about Mayor James Michael Curley. They have a statue. This is great. And this is history. I mean, the Romans, they've got all these statues of evil people. We've had to tear down evil people after we've cleaned up the mess in Europe, too. The latest being in Iraq. But anyway, here was how the Boston Herald summed up when Curley got re-elected mayor. Just listen to this. James Michael Curley encountered little opposition in his bid for the mayoralty. On November 4th, the Boston Herald recorded, quote, the despair that overwhelms many of Boston's citizens at the prospect of getting a good mayor out of Tuesday's election. The chances that the city will emerge with even a presentable mayor are negligible. And they summed up Mayor Curley in one devastating sentence. James Michael Curley, 3 times mayor, once governor, and 4 times elected to the National House, of which he is now a member, National House being Congress. He is a candidate for the 7th time, a professional politician whose only visible means of support has been his salary from public office, is now under a federal indictment in Washington on a charge of using the mails to defraud. In 12 years as mayor, he loaded $50 million. Now, this is going back to the 30s, probably the 20s, because this is 1946. Oh, we'll say the 30s. He has loaded $50 million on the city's debt, and in 2 years as governor, he increased the Commonwealth's debt by $20 million. He's 71 years old, not in rugged health, and offers no new program for the health of this city. Yet he was elected overwhelmingly with Joe Kennedy's backing, by the way, because he played the bargain and gave up the seat so that Jack could run. But does it sound familiar? We just had a governor, Deval Patrick, leave without a balanced budget, which he took an oath Only he left the state with $738 or whatever million deficit. We've got a president. You Democrats, anybody that's still listening, most of you have shut off the radio. You never turn on conservatives anyway, which is very unfortunate. They don't. He should be in jail. Deval Patrick should be under indictment. But he's a Democrat. What good is a law? James Michael Curley got re-elected when he was on his way to jail. That's how powerful those groups in Boston were then and still are. Still are.
Donnie, did you ever see the movie of Curley called The Last Hurrah?
Oh, yeah. I read the book, too.
And I want to tell you...
Skeffington. They used the name Skeffington.
Skeffington,
yep.
Yes. And it was a well-done movie. And I think it really brought to the forefront all of what James Michael Curley did. But I think it also, it kind of like jaundiced his reputation for a few indiscretions. I agree, they were wrong to make those indiscretions. But I had some dealings with him, believe it or not. I was just a child. And he used to walk through all the different precincts in the city. And I used to hang around at a precinct down the street from my house because it's where my father parked his car. The family car was parked in the parking lot right at the precinct. Mm-hmm. And any time there was an election, James Michael Curley would come walking into the precinct, and he'd be handing out nickels to the little kids. And then he would say, and I disagreed with this, and I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but he would say to the little children he's given the nickels to, go down to the cemetery and write down the names of the graves with the fresh flowers. I never understood what it was, and my father never allowed me to go do it. But that was how he was winning a lot of elections.
Well, again, this is, you hear me, Ken, excuse me just a second. This is what I mean about feelings now run the show. And this is why I'm concerned with the fact that over 50% of the voters are women, and they operate huge percentage operate on feel. Isn't that nice?
Yeah. Yeah.
And politicians, and the Democrats especially, have learned that that's how you have to cater to that. Right. That's the danger of this country. But go ahead. Yeah,
and just to sum it up, it's that like I said, my father wouldn't allow me to do it, but there were other kids in the neighborhood that would go do it.
Yep.
And you know, they never told me what they got out of it, but I'm sure they made a nickel for every name they ever did. But one of the things that he said, and he was true to it, was that he was for the poor person in the city. And in Roxbury back in those days, there wasn't a lot of money. There was very little money in Roxbury back in the 30s and 40s. On one side of the street was tenement houses. The other side of the street was where all of the merchant owners and the mill work, the people that owned the mills, they all lived on the other side of the street and had maids. It was an interesting life.
But see, Kenny, I don't dispute. There are people, again, charity is a wonderful thing, but not with someone else's money. And again, we keep hearing, that's what Maggie Thatcher said, is the trouble with socialism is they eventually run out of other people's money.
Correct.
In the meantime, of course, they win votes by spending your money and my money.
Right.
Curley did that. But again, this is principles, not personalities, as we know. This is the trouble. You get a personable, good-looking politician, and he's a backslapper, and he does this and does that, and everybody thinks he's wonderful. He's doing it, however, with taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
Every politician at every level, I don't care if it's Plymouth or Carver or Weymouth, every politician that's elected has, and built into that election, a responsibility for protecting the monetary honesty of their tax of the taxpayer. They don't do it anymore. By and large, they don't do it anymore. And here's what you got. You gave me a segue. I mean, the other thing is, when you have a position in the law, in other words, a politician is under the law. There are laws.
That's why they take the oath.
I just mentioned Deval Patrick, who's getting over $7,000 a day, you know, for his interest in trying to promote the Olympics, which is a fiasco, especially since he spent the state into this oblivious situation. And all you people that stick up for the Democrats, you know who's going to pay for it? Your kids. If you're my age, it's your kids and grandkids that are out there working and being taxed to death to pay for a guy like Deval Patrick who's throwing the money away and throwing it at people who don't do a damn thing. Now they've just elected, first in this state, we just had that attorney general. Thank God she didn't win the governorship. What's her name again?
Coakley?
Yeah, Coakley, Martha.
Martha.
She's the highest legal authority in the state as Attorney General. Yet she says illegal technically isn't illegal in the state of Massachusetts when it comes to immigrants. Well, wait a minute. I'm a first-generation immigrant. My father came here at 4 years old. My grandparents, they had to have a job, a sponsor. They had a place to live. They had to be in good health. That's what made them legal.
You did it the right way.
But it's one thing for a liberal nitwit, here I go, for a liberal nitwit to just, oh, we've got to help. We're not talking about help. We're talking about obeying the law. Now, today, they just confirmed with a lot of these useless Republicans, they confirmed Obama's nomination for Attorney General of the United States, a black woman, politically correct. Wonderful, isn't it? Must make you feel great. And I'm not a racist and I'm not anti-women, but I'm sick to death of it. By the way, Kenny, is anyone else, here's McKeag with the mic, is anyone else sick to death of hearing these and seeing these young girls being the spokespeople for the Obama administration on hugely important military situations where we've got trouble? Now, I don't negate that they're smart. But what does a 30-year-old, 28-year-old girl, that's or young man either. He's got another couple of young guys, so let's take the sex part of it out of it. I mean, is there any merit in these liberal Democrat administrations for age and background and experience? Nobody says a word. I listen to their arguments at their age, and it, to me, is just another proof of why this country is slip-sliding. So now we just confirmed this woman who says, right, she's the Attorney General of the United States right now. Well, she hasn't been, I guess, taken the oath yet. She says publicly, I'm not going to enforce immigration laws.
Oh, boy.
And you know what? All you lawyers, all you judges, where are you? You say you got a great profession. I said this before about the Massachusetts Bar Association. Didn't say a word when the head of the legal system in this state made a statement that should have been outrage in the legal community. Never mind all the liberal nitwits out there, as I said before. I mean, and Kenny, you were talking about, you know, again, we make these well, you know, I know we shouldn't have done this. How would you feel, ladies and gentlemen, if you go into the dentist's office and he just takes the tools that he's going to work on your mouth and just takes them Doesn't sterilize them. By law, they have to sterilize them, okay? Or a doctor doing, you know, giving you an injection. Would you stand for that? Oh, he's a nice guy. No, you wouldn't, and you shouldn't. Well, politicians shouldn't be any different. They take an oath, and there's rules and regulations that they are supposed to follow. And when they don't, when they're a Democrat, no one does anything. Say, oh, well, oh, he's a nice guy. Oh, he gives the kids candy all the time. See, that wins the mummies over. Oh, he gives the kids candy all the time. That's the danger of having people who don't know anything voting. And we've got millions of them. And we have too many millions that don't contribute to this country. They've never been anywhere and seen anything. And if they do, it doesn't matter to them because they're in their own little worlds because we've enabled them. So anyway, that was one of the things. I hope you saw what I recommend. It's still able, but because this book was quite enlightening and not very flattering to the marriage of Rose Kennedy and Joe Kennedy. The family went up in arms, excuse me, and the other two books that this man was going to write, excuse me, never took place, which is unfortunate because if you get through the personal, there was so much more positive, so much more about John Kennedy that now it's covered by others, I guess, but it's just, again, I just have to at least, and I'm glad I can still be concerned and I protect my friendship there. I stand up for people, but wrong is wrong, that's all. And another problem is when we have this tendency of parents now, the kids do wrong in school, and instead of the parents backing the school, backing the teachers, they're down there raising Cain over the discipline of their own kids. And that will backfire without question. Historically, it has been seen to not at all pay off. Then we have, again, the Clinton situation. You know, I mean, there's this book that's coming out. Again, one hand in the Democratic Party, it doesn't mesh if it's a Democrat. We saw it with Gary Studs down on the Cape. Has sex with a young boy. He happened to be homosexual. I couldn't care less. Doesn't bother me to have a homosexual or a lesbian be in office. It bothers me if they do something that is illegal, which this behavior of his was. Gets him drunk, has sex with him. He's underage. I owned restaurants. If I ever did that with a female busgirl or waitress working for me that was underage, if I was given a waitress that was 18, you can't even let them serve alcohol in the restaurant. That's the farce of liberalism, of liberal Democrats, of justifiers. So what do? They re-elect Studs, 6 terms and name a park after him. If it was a Republican, he'd have been out on his fanny, and he wouldn't have been able to sell pencils at Grossman's. Well, Grossman's is out of business now, aren't they?
There's still a couple. Matter of fact, there's one right here in Plymouth. You can go in there. It's a Grossman's clearance outlet right here in Plymouth.
Well, I love the press coverage, though. Hillary goes up to New Hampshire. It was covered a little bit. But again, it disappears. If it was George Bush, if it was a Republican, she's got young women out there, came for miles to meet her, and she walks right by him. Right by him, doesn't say a word, doesn't acknowledge they're even there. Won't matter to them, though. They're going to vote for her because she's a woman. We need a woman. Do you get it? We needed a black. We needed a woman. And I keep saying, where are you Jewish people? Where are you Greeks? Where are you Chinese? Japanese? We've never had one of you as a president. Come on. Come on. It's only fair. Never mind credentials. That's way down the list.
Might I add right now,
yes.
if anybody has any different opinion than yours,
correct,
and they're watching and they're close to a phone, the number's 508-830-3971. We got 6 minutes left, and I'd like to hear somebody else challenge those opinions.
Oh, they can challenge them as long as they give me facts.
We won't hang up on them.
Well, that's why they don't call, but we've been a failure on the call. I don't understand that. I thought we'd be getting calls, and we know the lines are working.
Oh, they're working. I tested them before the show.
But again, it's a shame, and we are every day we pay price. We pay a moral price. We pay a financial price, and what's most important is we pay a huge price for our succeeding generations, which is why I'm not a hero. I don't mean that, but that's why I can meet my maker, and I keep saying, at least I'll say I tried to do something. I sure as heck haven't done everything right, and I don't hold myself up as a soapbox orator that has all the answers. I don't. But I've lived through it. I've been a businessman. I've been a teacher. I've been the things that I know what works and what doesn't. I don't make $600,000 or $700,000 on a TV station and never made a payroll, never did a darn thing in the real world. And I'm certainly not a president who never did a darn thing in the real world, and now he knows it all. I mean, I know he has advisors, but to me, it's a very frightening thing in this world to have people making military decisions with not only no real experience with the military other than to dislike it, and yet be in control. I don't understand how people, I don't mean you have to be a military man, but my word, in this world the way it is, we've got to have someone that surrounds themselves, if nothing more, and has a positive attitude toward military, just as we have to have someone in law enforcement that has a positive feeling for the police departments. My word, again, I keep saying, you police officers, every time, oh, by the way, did you see that Skip, I didn't get to this, it'll be too late, but this, oh boy, there's his last name, I didn't write it down. He had that genealogy show. Again, he got it because he's politically correct. This is that Harvard professor.
Oh, it's beyond me, Donnie.
That gave Hayes, or what's his name, something like that.
At a genealogy show?
He has a genealogy show, and he's the one that has these different people on, celebrities. And I catch it every now and then. They're all liberal.
Oh, you're talking about Ben Affleck on PBS.
No, well, that's who we had on, but that's not the host. Okay. Now they're talking that they might have to let him go because of the integrity. Well, you watch. Just like Brian Williams. The only reason Brian Williams is gone, you know, is there was a huge outrage. Huge. Not because the networks had the courage or the integrity to get rid of him because he's a liberal. Well, this guy's a liberal, but he had Ben Affleck on, and they're supposed to, when they look at someone's heritage and their relatives all the way back, they're supposed to talk whether good or bad. Right. And Affleck, of course, he behind the scenes and got this guy to back off. Now, if that was Rush Limbaugh, if that was Clint Eastwood, you can bet your bippy that guy would never back off.
Right. Exactly.
He'd say either you come on the show. Well, beautifully, and what I love is it's backlashed on him.
He's got a lot of trouble over it.
Well, he should have.
And Affleck's got a lot of problems with it too, because he's out there now trying to distance himself,
of course,
from the facts.
He's a phony. He's a Hollywood
and that's exactly what
limousine liberal.
Limousine
a typical
liberal,
limousine
phony
liberal.
Who tries to make himself look good. And if
Most of them are phonies.
Yeah,
most
awful,
of them are.
awful. Donnie, you need to make sure that everybody knows that this...
We are on YouTube, too,
We're
by the
on
way.
YouTube. And
this
people
show
in
will be
Florida
shown.
have watched it, and people in Colorado have
Colorado,
watched it.
Florida. I actually heard from someone in, I haven't had a chance to tell you, I heard from someone in Albany, New York, a friend.
Very good.
Caught it on YouTube.
What you're going to tell your friends is that the television program that we shot with you on the Kennedys over at your house in Carver is going to be playing on YouTube under the same thing, the Don McKeag TV show.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to go to you, and they're going to be able to sit and watch that program that was filmed in a different studio.
Oh, no kidding, yeah.
So you'll be able to tell people about...
How long has that been on available?
I just realized that enough time has passed that I can go after it now. It's on the internet, and I can go get it, and I can pull it down, and I'm going to put it up this week.
A lot would like to see that, I think, because
I'm going to put it up this week,
yeah.
so you can talk about it.
Oh, that's
and
good.
don't forget to tell everybody you have a radio show on Saturdays.
Yes, I'll repeat it.
The 95.1 radio.
The 2 fastest hours on radio. And by the way, did I show you my wonderful letter from Gene McGowan?
No.
Oh, dear, I forgot to bring it. In Wareham. I want to thank you, Gene. I mentioned it on the radio. When I get back from Florida, I receive very nice things most of the time. Every now and then I'll get one, and that's all right.
Is this the lady you told me about that she's not only listens to the show, but she watches
She watches this show, yes.
So she'll
she said Tuesdays and Thursdays, evidently she gets the show.
So evidently she's going to get a shout-out from you in a minute, right?
That's what she's getting from me, yes. I just want to thank her. And my mailing address is P.O. Box 7, South Carver 02366, should you care to send me anything. I have a wonderful speech that was written, didn't have a chance to get to it today, by... No, it's way too long. But Neil Borse, it is fabulous, and it was never delivered because the colleges did not like the content. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the liberals, if you remember, Condoleezza Rice, a former Secretary of State under George Bush, and a brilliant woman, happens to be black, and I forget which college did not let her speak because of her Republican conservative positions. But they are standing in front of our young people and telling them that they are unbiased, that they don't have an axe to grind. It's frightening. Something's got to be done about the educational system, I'll tell you that. But anyway, I want to thank all of you for listening. I hope some of it was entertaining, if not informative. And God bless. I'll look forward to next Thursday. 45 degrees this morning, though, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, I was in Florida for 10 days, and I must say I kind of wish this morning I was back there. So again, God bless. Have a great weekend coming up. Please take an interest in your town and your state and your government. Too many people have given up too much to give us what we have, to not be appreciated for it. I'm Don McKeag. It's the Don McKeag TV Show, and good night.